So in part 2, we're graphing absolute value functions, or absolute value inequalities. We graphed absolute values on our last quiz, so you guys know how to do these. So we're doing it the same way. So if I made my little chart with my x and y, what would my middle number be here? 0, because I don't have anything happening in these absolute value bars. So 0 is my middle number. What's a number smaller than 0? -1. What's a number bigger than 0? 1. So let's plug in -1. I have the absolute value of -1 minus 4. What's the absolute value of -1? 1. And what's 1 minus 4? -3. So I plugged in -1 and got -3. So on my graph, I'm going to go to the left to -1 and down 3. So that's my first point. Now I plug in 0. So I have the absolute value of 0 minus 4. What's 0 minus 4? -4. So I plugged in 0 and got -4. So I stay on 0, go down to -4, put a point there. And then plug in 1. What's the absolute value of 1?
1.
And 1 minus 4 is? -3. So I plugged in 1, got -3. So go to the right to +1, down to -3. Do I have what shape is my absolute value graph? Kind of. What shape? A V. Absolute value graphs are always going to be that V shape. And do I have a solid V or a dotted V here? Solid V, because it is greater than or equal to. So it's a solid V. Now I'm going to do the same thing that I did before. I want to plug in a point to test to see where I'm going to shade. You're either going to shade inside the V or outside the V. So what's a point that I could plug in? 0, 0. So plug in 0 for x and 0 for y. So 0 is greater than or equal to 0 minus 4. So 0 is greater than or equal to -4. Is this true? Is 0 greater than -4?
Yes.
Yeah, it's true. So where am I going to shade? I'm going to shade inside the V because 0, 0 is right there. So I shade where 0, 0 is. So inside the V. If it didn't work, so 0, 0 is inside and it worked. Let's say if this didn't work, it wasn't true, then we would shade outside. So you shade where 0, 0 is not if it doesn't work. Any questions here? All right, let's look at the next one. What's my middle number going to be here? 0, because I have nothing in these absolute value bars here. What's a number smaller than 0? And a number bigger than 0? So let's plug in -1. I have 2 times the absolute value of -1 plus 3. What's the absolute value of -1? 1. And 1 times 2? 2. And 2 plus 3 is 5. So I plugged in -1 and got 5. So on my graph, I'm going to go to the left 1 and up 5. Next, I'm going to plug in 0. So 2 times 0 plus 3. What's 2 times 0?
0.
And what's 0 plus 3? 3. So I plugged in 0 and got 3. So I stay on 0, go up 3. So that's my next point. And then lastly, I'm going to plug in 1. So 2 times 1,
2.
and 2 plus 3, 5. So I plugged in 1 and got 5. So I'm going to go to the right 1 and up 5. Is this going to be a solid V or a dotted V? Solid V. What should I do next? Plug in 0, 0. So 0, 0 is right there. It's outside. So I'm going to plug in 0 for x and 0 for y. So I have 0 is less than or equal to 2 times the absolute value of 0 plus 3. What's 2 times the absolute value of 0? 2. 2 times 0?
Oh, 0.
0. And 0 plus 3? 3. So is 0 less than or equal to 3? Yes. So that works. So where am I going to shade?
Inside. Outside.
I shade where 0, 0 is, so that would be outside. So that would be here, on the outside. So because it works, and because 0, 0 is on the outside, you want to shade outside. All right, so what should our middle number be?
0.
So is there anything happening inside of our bars?
Oh, wait. This is
Yeah.
-1.
So our middle number we want to be -1, the opposite of what's inside of our bars. So what's a number smaller than -1? -2. And what's a number bigger than -1? 0. So let's plug in -2. We have 3 times -2 plus 1. Remember, you have to follow your order of operations here. So we have to do inside those absolute value bars first. What's -2 plus 1?
-1.
And what's the absolute value of -1?
1.
So what's 3 times 1? 3. So I plugged in -2 and got 3. So on my graph, I'm going to go to the left to -2 and up 3. Next, I'm going to plug in -1. So I have 3 times -1 plus 1. What's -1 plus 1?
0.
And what's 3 times the absolute value of 0? 0. So I plugged in -1 and got 0. So go to the left to -1, stay on 0. And then lastly, I'm going to plug in 0. So 3 times the absolute value of 0 plus 1. What's 0 plus 1?
1.
And what's 3 times the absolute value of 1?
3.
3. So I plugged in 0 and got 3. So stay on 0, go up 3. Do I have a solid line or a dotted line? Or solid V or dotted V? A solid V. What should I do next?
0 plus 0.
Plug in 0, 0. So this is the point that I'm testing. So I have 0 for x and 0 for y. So 0 is greater than or equal to 3 times the absolute value of 0 plus 1. So 0 is greater than or equal to, what is 0 plus 1? 1. And 3 times 1 is 3. So is 0 greater than or equal to 3?
No.
No, it doesn't work. So where am I going to shade?
I'm going to shade down.
Inside or outside?
Outside.
Raise your hand if you think inside. Raise your hand if you think outside. It's definitely inside. Because this didn't work. So you plug in where 0, 0 is not. So 0, 0 is on the outside. So since it didn't work, you shade on the inside. Yes. So I like it when that y is all by itself because it's easier to solve. What's my middle number going to be? 0, because I have nothing in that absolute value bar. What's a number smaller than 0? And bigger than 0? 1. So I'm going to plug in -1 first. So -1, the absolute value of -1 plus 6. What's the absolute value of -1? 1. And what's 1 plus 6? 7. So I plugged in -1 and got 7. So on my graph, I'm going to go to the left to -1 and up 7. Put a point there. Next, I'm going to plug in 0. So the absolute value of 0 plus 6. What's 0 plus 6?
6.
So I stay on 0 and go up 6. So here's my next point. And lastly, I plug in 1. What's the absolute value of 1 plus 6?
7.
7. So I go to the right to 1 and up 7. Do I have a solid line or a dotted line here? A dotted V. What do I do next?
Plug in 0.
I'm going to plug in 0, 0 to see where I shade. 0, 0 is outside there. So I'm going to plug in 0 for x and 0 for y. So 0 minus 6 is less than the absolute value of 0. So negative 6 is less than 0. Is this true? Yes. So where am I going to shade? Outside the V, below it here.